Good evening and welcome to tonight's Facebook Live, talking about getting together to help each other to move through what's happening with the pandemic, but more importantly about how we can find resilience within it. I'm trying an experiment tonight. Normally I do these Facebook Lives on my iPhone, but the problem is that when I do that, if somebody writes something that's a little bit long, I can't see it all. So I'm going to do it this way tonight, and if I fumble it or make a mistake, I'm sure you'll bear with me. Okay, so at the moment we have Haresh, we have Tracy, we have Karen, Sarupa and Maria, so welcome, thank you for joining us. Hopefully we'll get, hi Ola, hopefully we'll get sorted out with the Zoom. It was a little bit more involved than I thought it was. Hi Anita. To be able to do Zoom and then stream it through Facebook requires a couple of steps. Being technologically challenged on occasions, I'm doing it in two stages. So first I've gone from the iPhone to the computer, and next week we'll go from the computer and we'll do the Zoom and stream it through Facebook. So it just shows you what you can learn when you're in the middle of a pandemic and you're locked down. All sorts of doors open if you've got the time, the energy and the patience to work with it. So we've got another couple of people joined us. That's really nice. Hi Juliet. I'd like to continue the theme from last week, but if any of you have any questions or any comments you'd like to make, feel free to type away. Because I can now see the comments more easily on the computer, hopefully I'll get to see the whole message. All right, let's be a bit serious for a moment. Since we all met together last week, there's a lot more people become infected. There's been an enormous number of people died. There's also been an enormous number of people who've been laid off work. So they've found they've no longer got a job. They've still got all their expenses. And no matter how helpful the government is, they're going to struggle to meet those expenses. It brought it home to me today because I was hearing about a situation with the schools here, and I'm sure it's the same situation everywhere, where a lot of the children who come from disadvantaged families have been receiving breakfast and lunch at school to ensure that they get good nutrition, so that even if they don't get it at home, they have something during the day. And of course, now that the schools are closed here, that's not happening. So those parents are not only under stress because they can't afford to feed their children fully during normal circumstances, it's even worse now. And that must be very hard for them. So I'd like us to just take a moment and send thoughts of love and light to anyone and everyone who finds themselves challenged on any front at this time. Let's just etherically hold hands in a kind of circle and just radiate love and light to all those in need, wherever they may be. And what a difference it makes to the energy when we stop and we pause and we do something like that. It doesn't take very long, but it does have an impact. Feel free to jump in with anything you might want to say at any time. It's not a monologue. The whole idea is that we talk, we share with each other. But while I'm waiting for somebody to do that, I've still got a couple of things that came in last week. So one of the things I want to talk about is thankfulness, not gratitude. I personally don't believe in gratitude, and I've explained that on many occasions, so I'm not going to go into that now because it's not about me. Thankfulness, the opportunity to stop, and it's an old-fashioned saying, but I think it could prove beneficial at this time, to stop and count our blessings. Because a lot of people are becoming irritated, fearful, impatient, intolerant with what they're seeing. If we stop and take a moment and count our blessings, stop and look at what we have in our lives for which we're thankful, it kind of takes the edge off anything negative we might be feeling. What it also does is it offers an opportunity to realise that no matter how bad things may be, it's not the end of the world. At the moment, there's not a lot happening in our world. Some places are still very, very busy. Their circumstances may be different, I don't know, because I'm not there. But for a lot of places, the pace has shifted. And those things that we said we'd get round to when we had time, for many of us, we've got the time now. And we may feel frustrated because we may have the time, but now we don't have the money. So it seems as though no matter what, it's never quite working. But if you stop and take a moment to think about what you might be thankful for, perhaps some of those things that you wanted to do if you had time might not seem to be so important after all. Perhaps it's time to look at what's a want. I'm getting a bit distracted because I can just hear my dog going in and having a great big drink of water. And that's one thing that I'm thankful for. Perhaps it's time to stop and ask ourselves, are some of the things that we think we want really important in this new scheme of things? Because I can't see things getting back to normal next week. How do any of you feel? I'd like some comments. I'd like to know what's happening out there to the people that are sitting watching this. What is it that's one thing you might be thankful for, perhaps more than anything at the moment? For me, it's the fact that people seem to be reaching out to each other more fully. But if they're not, then they're missing something, and they're missing something because something's hurting them. On some level or another, they're fearful or they're in pain. And it's hard in those times to be thankful. But what are the sorts of things that you're all thankful for? Perhaps if you start to share on here, it might remind other people of what they're thankful for. I'm seeing lots of hearts and I'm seeing thumbs up, but I'm not seeing anybody writing a comment. And this is supposed to be a conversation, not a monologue. So does anybody have any comments that they might like to insert at this point in time? Wow. Well, they say silence is golden. But this is real silence. Come on, Sarupa, Ola, Anita, Tracy. What kind of things would you like to add? Because I can't see any comments coming in. It says that there are 30 comments, but at the moment, I can't see any of them. Let me see. It helps if you move things on the slider. Ah, yeah. Sarupa says that they have lunches for vulnerable children in the UK. That's good. Yes, it was nice taking the moment for everyone, wasn't it, Haresh? Glynis wants to know how we can support carers who stay at home to look after loved ones. She's guessing some of their support may have been taken away. Absolutely. The difficulty with this is that unless you actually know those people, I don't know that there's a lot you can do. However, if you do know carers who suddenly find that not only are they working from home, but they're looking after kids, or they're looking after people that are sick and they've got no job, there's not a lot you can do in general. Of course, there's the clapping. People go outside and they clap to show their appreciation, which is great if you live in a suburban area. But if you live in an area where the properties are few and far between, such as where you live, Glynis, then you're going to stand and clap, but there's not a lot of people that are going to be joining you. One of the things is commenting on Facebook. There's been a lot of comments locally about our essential workers here and how much we appreciate what they do. But actual physical support for those people has to come from the organisations, I believe, has to come from the organisations that are geared up to help them. What does anybody else think about that? Anshelm says it provides an opportunity to look at resources differently, and that's true. We don't need as much as we think we do, which means that if we don't need as much as we think we do, we could slow down a little bit more, let the earth breathe more often, and not push people to work long hours to supply stuff that's not necessarily all that important. That's a good point, Sarupa, that you feel so much is no longer as real as you once believed was important. And that's true. I think when we're under a change such as this, a lot of the stuff that used to be really important kind of falls away. Yeah, that's true, Sonia. When we think about what we're thankful for, we can't help but smile, because it makes us remember what we have in our lives that we might have taken for granted. Juliet, highlighting what we say we want and what we perhaps actually want on a deeper level. That's true too. Sarupa is thankful for Wi-Fi. All is thankful for the change of the rhythm in her day. There's a lot, isn't there, to be thankful for? How can we show that? How can we show that we appreciate the people in our lives? Saturday we had lunch with our son and his partner. We're in New Zealand and they're in Australia, so it was lunch for us, it was brunch for them, but we sat around and we had a good chat. Not quite the same, because you can't give each other a hug, but that sense of connection is really important. And I think whilst ever we can find creative ways to maintain a connection to people around us, I think we're going to be okay. Elaine wants to know if I can't see you. No, I can't, because we're not using Zoom. We're still using Facebook. Nadine, we're commenting on what we can be thankful for. So basically, everybody's saying the same thing. It's about the people around us. It's about the connections that we have. It's the sense of community. If there are people that don't have a sense of community, then I think how we help them is perhaps by helping the organisations who know who they are and who help them. So we kind of quietly do it behind the scenes. How does everybody feel about that? Breathe for someone who can't breathe right now. Brilliant. Thankful for the Queen. Her words softened many who felt hardened and frustrated. I think her speech this morning was brilliant. She's a real light in the world, because no matter what the crisis, she's like the Rock of Gibraltar, which is interesting because she spent her early married life on the Rock of Gibraltar. So, let's see. Yes, thankful for Jacinda because I think she's done an excellent job. Respite is something, Elaine, that isn't easy. There is such a large demand, as I understand it, such a large demand on it and for it now, that I don't think we have the health professionals, which is why they're asking people who've retired, would they consider coming back and helping out at the moment? And I think that's a great idea. I don't know if that's happening in other places, but I think it's brilliant. Yeah, it's good to get away from the distractions. Nadine says she's thankful that she gets to homeschool her daughter, which I think that is great. And I think nature, if we're fortunate enough to have access to nature, to parks, to trees, to beautiful spaces, as part of our, I don't know about other people, but here we're allowed to go out and walk around locally. So that's kind of like round the block. If you've got access to a space that's pretty close, wonderful. If not, well, if you've got an imagination, you can always take a moment to sit and think about a place that you have visited that you really loved and take yourself back through that experience. That recharges just as much as doing it physically because our brain doesn't know the difference. Sruba says we could do a post weekly on Facebook for what we're thankful for. Yes, I think it's a good idea, and I also think that sometimes people think it's too woo-woo, and then it makes it about us. But we could do, and this is what I'd like to do with the Getting Together Facebook page, which we've actually started, get people to post images or things that they see as they go about that brighten their day. I think I talked last week about the fact that people are putting bears in their windows, but apparently in the UK they're doing rainbows. We could have images of both. Rainbow is spiritually is about transition. So I think anything like that we can put onto that page. I don't think this is my personal feeling, I don't think it's about jokes. I think jokes, it's good to have a laugh, yes, but I think if it's only jokes, we're going to lose the point. I think it'd be nice to have a good mixture of little videos and images and comments and something that you think that's quite funny. I think all is right. Probably the biggest impact we can make is how we talk to people, particularly because we can't necessarily see them. So if you're on the phone to somebody, they can't see your facial expression. They don't know if you're smiling or if you're frowning. So how you speak to them, the tone of voice you use when you speak to them is going to make a big impression. When you're in one place and your family's in another, and they're going through a hard time, how are you going to support that? Supposing there's somebody in the States and there's somebody in China and there's somebody in Indonesia, and they're all part of the same family, and one of those three areas, that person's an essential worker and not coping very well. How would you help that family member in that situation? Telling them you love them is good. Telling them how great they are is good. Sometimes listening while they let off steam is even better. Encourage them to, if they've got something like that happening, to get it out of the system so that it doesn't continue to trouble them. posting positive images, yeah. Yeah, the rainbows are for the hospitals, and they started with palliative care because children who were at the point of passing over used to start drawing rainbows, and the staff realised that the rainbows were starting to be drawn by children who quite shortly afterwards died, so that the children knew what was going to happen. They knew they were in transition. They've been a good symbol. They were a symbol for a long time for AIDS. So anything like that that's positive, I think, is important. And perhaps the biggest thing we can do is each day just take a moment, like we did at the beginning of this, to send love and light out to everyone, no matter who they are or where they are, who would be open to receive it. And if they're not, it doesn't matter, because you're sending it out into the world. You're going to benefit the planet. We're all going to benefit. Any comment anybody else would like to make whilst we're doing this? No? What I'd like to do next week is hopefully have the Zoom set up. They've just changed the rules this weekend, which threw me. Apparently we all have to have passwords now. So I'm not quite certain how that's going to work with people just coming on. But we'll research it, and we'll put a post on by Friday to let everybody know. But if we can't do it through Zoom, we'll carry on doing it this way. Put whatever comments you'd like, or any topics, or if there's something that you want to share, go to the Getting Together Facebook page. That's what it's called, Getting Together. And just put it on there. And if you've got some images or some thoughts that you want to share, a happy memory, post it. Let's start to get an energy going that's about connection, and then let's see where that goes out into the community. Yes, Cynthia, almost like being in our cocoon, making ready to become the butterfly. We are. We've got the perfect opportunity to stop being a caterpillar and start being a butterfly. If we're willing to take the opportunity to look at what we could create out of this and allow our imagination to lead us, it could be absolutely magical. But if we sit in our fear, and for some people I can appreciate it's really tough right now, so it's hard not to sit in fear. Perhaps some of the other things that we could consider as a group of people, as a community, is how we might support organisations that support the people that we're never going to know about who are struggling at this time. And I'm not saying let's us do some donating through this, but perhaps we've each got organisations that we like to support that might need a little bit more support. I'll leave that out there for people to consider. Let's have a look. Yes, you're right, Elaine. It has become so much easier to talk to strangers. You walk down the road and people talk now because there's so much separation. I think they just like the idea of coming together and talking to each other, or that connection from saying hello. Thank you, Haresh. We can create a connection infection on the Getting Together group. Yeah, John talked about being an infection, and I think I showed that video on Facebook this week, where I talked about him saying that we needed to become an infection. And I think it would be good if we create a connection infection. I think that's a great idea, because it's going to open us all up to other people. Caroline says her grandchildren have just created a massive collage of a rainbow, and it's the coronavirus rainbow called a pot of gold. So there's a child that's not afraid of it. She's turned it into something magical. How about that's our challenge for this coming week? How can we create magic for ourselves, but for the people around us? People we know, people we don't know. I'm going to leave you with that thought. Thank you for joining us, and we'll meet again next week, where if we can get the Zoom working, the format will be a little bit different. So we're continuing to explore and to challenge ourselves in doing so, to find ways to make this more interactive and less about me rabbiting on. So thank you very much for being part of this tonight. Thank you for sharing your love and your light. I appreciate it, as I'm sure people that receive it do. And I look forward to catching up with you all next week. Bye for now.